It's our segment on Wake Up Central where we continue to answer your questions big and small. Now our question this morning comes from Little Rock. Will the recent heat dome ruin our fall foliage? That is a great question. With the official start of fall just weeks away, our sights are set on football, cool temperatures, and yes, the leaves changing colors.
We can get some really beautiful colors. Our black gums, our sumacs, the oaks, even the sweet gums, they will turn sometimes these beautiful vibrant colors in the fall.
Unfortunately, the fall of 2023 may fall flat due to a lack of rainfall.
Right now, if you start looking around, we're getting yellows. In fact, further south, the elms have already turned yellow and eventually brown. There's a black gum, which is usually one of the first things to turn red in the fall. They're really now beginning to turn, and they're not really turning that nice, pretty red we like.
Not just the drought from this summer affecting the fall foliage, a moderate to strong El Nino in the coming months is doing us no favors as well.
But it just happened to have this big high pressure bubble over the top of us and just keeps hotter, getting hotter. Something will move it, whether it will be a hurricane in the Gulf or a front coming from the Pacific Northwest, but something's going to move this thing out and then we'll become more seasonable.
Although this fall may not be as vibrant as those in the past, the natural state still has plenty of beauty to offer.
Maybe we'll get some nice yellows, maybe we'll get some oranges. I'm hoping for that anyway.
Now our question this morning comes from Mom L. When is the best time of day to water my lawn? That is a great question. It's summer in Arkansas, and that means the heat is on. With this week's heat dome squarely over the natural state, folks are wondering, how do I keep my grass fresh and green? According to LawnDoctor.com, the best time to water the grass is in the early morning, ideally before 10 a.m. At this time, the temperature outside is still relatively cool, and the wind and the sun are not as intense. These factors allow the water to soak into the soil and be absorbed by the grass roots before it can evaporate. Watering early also helps with the risk of fungal diseases as the grass blades have time to dry out before nightfall. Now, if you're not an early bird, that's okay. The second best time to water your grass is in the late afternoon or early evening after 4 p.m. Like the morning, the temperature has cooled off and the sun is not as intense. However, you should avoid watering your grass too late in the day, as this can promote the growth of fungus. It's also important to know what type of grass you have in your lawn so that you can adjust your watering routine accordingly. Now our question this morning comes from Morrilton. Does Arkansas have an inheritance tax? Well, that's a great question. The last thing anyone wants to worry about when a parent or relative passes away is money, but unfortunately it is often necessary. If you inherit money or belongings, you will be forced to pay an inheritance tax in some states. That, however, is not the case here in Arkansas. Arkansas has no inheritance tax. However, inheritance laws in other states may apply to you if you inherit money or assets from someone who lives in a state that does have an inheritance tax. Arkansas also has no gift tax. The federal gift tax exclusion is $17,000 in 2023. Now, if you give more than that amount to any one person, you must report it to the IRS. If you receive an inheritance from someone living out of the state of Arkansas, make sure to check the local laws in your grantor's state to see if you do owe an inheritance tax. Our question this morning comes from Little Rock. What is the history of Little Rock's 9th Street neighborhood and the Juneteenth holiday? That is a great question.
What's interesting about that is emancipation happened at different times across the country. I mean, we know the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1862, and every community reacted and responded differently.
According to Keith Fletcher, director of the Mosaic Templars Cultural Center, the Juneteenth that we know today comes from the word and enforcement getting to those final enslaved Africans in Galveston, Texas in 1865.
But before then,
Well, you know, Journey's story was so good, I wanted to rerun it. I wanted to run it again, of course. I had a little bit of a different take, too. Mine was more talking about the 9th Street neighborhood, which is incredible. If you saw it earlier at 5:45, we'll have it on thv11.com. But just to bring it back to and talk about how important this holiday is and how exciting the events are going to be on Saturday, but specifically where this event is going to be and how special 9th Street is to so many people and the history behind it. In fact, Our guys are so good, they got the story
turned
ready
it
for you
around.
now.
Let's
So you
do
know
it.
what? Here's a little history lesson for you real quick.
Is that this shouldn't be just a black holiday because we're celebrating freedom for all Americans.
Brian Rogers with the Mosaic Templars Cultural Center understands the history of this area.
The neighborhood really starts pre-Civil War when it was known as Hazel Street.
Following the fall of Little Rock in 1863 during the Civil War, 9th Street began to take shape.
So they start black businesses, black hospitals, black lawyers, black doctors, and all of these things are concentrated down here on the west end of 9th Street.
As the decades passed, 9th Street became vibrant for businesses and entertainment, most notably inside the current Flag and Banner building and the Dreamland Ballroom.
Musical stars like Billie Holiday and Nat King Cole, and they dance till 2 or 3 in the morning, and they eat and they have a great time because there were restaurants and liquor stores that just catered to, that nighttime crowd.
Unfortunately, long gone are the glory days of the Dreamland Ballroom. However, ahead of the Juneteenth holiday, Rogers and the Mosaic Templars have their eyes on the future.
What we would like to see is that this area become a historic neighborhood, kind of a historic area where we try to focus on bringing back some of those things that once existed here.
Our question this morning comes from a teacher in Lone Oak. Why are districts starting back sooner this year? That is a great question. Summer break never feels quite long enough for students and teachers, but are districts really going back early this year? Now, before 2021, the law stated that school must start between August 14th and August 26th.
And then in 2021, we passed a law that changed that, and it said that it cannot start until 2 weeks before Labor Day. That would be the earliest point.
State Representative Julie Mayberry says that change, however, was short-lived.
We had school districts across the state really not liking that, and we're all asking for waivers on it, and pretty much came to us and said, please fix this. Let's go back to the way it was.
In January of 2023, House Bill 1122 was passed, co-sponsored by Representative Mayberry, saying in part, the first day of school for student attendance in public elementary and secondary schools shall be on or after the Monday of the week in which August 19th falls, not earlier than August 14th and not later than August 26th.
We wanted to get on top of it right away is because the school districts were setting their calendars for the next year, and they were anxiously waiting for some type of information to come from us to say it's okay to go back to the way it was.
Representative Mayberry believes the change back is pivotal for districts to have a little bit of freedom when choosing.
We want to give flexibility to school districts as to when to start. Every school is different. We want to give local control so that people are making the decisions there.